All right, welcome back to our Leadership That Heals Systems webinar. Again, these webinars are going to be bi-weekly every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific time. So if you're a leader, a change agent, someone in your workplace that is making an impact, please feel free to join these webinars. All right, so good morning, everyone. Today, we're talking about something that most leaders often overlook, and that is memory. Okay. So, this episode is, or webinar, I guess, is the memory advantage, how leaders shape what teams retain, recall, and repeat. All right. So, again, we're talking about memory, not motivation, not productivity, not compliance, memory. Okay. Because if your team doesn't remember it, they can't apply it. They can't execute it. They can't scale it. Okay. And today is not about teaching everything there is to know about neuroscience and memory, but it is about helping you understand how memory actually works, how leadership behavior affects the memory of your team and the individuals you're working with, and how to communicate in a way that increases recall, clarity, and follow through. All right. Because when the mind clicks, performance follows. Let's begin. So, starting off, we're going to do a quick education on how memory works. Okay. We're going to briefly talk about three different types of memory. You have short term memory. All right. This is temporary. This is a holding space. It lasts seconds to minutes, right? If the information isn't reinforced, it disappears. That's short term memory. Okay. That's like playing a game of memory with the cards, right? You're matching, you're flipping them over. Tomorrow you're not going to know which cards you flipped over and which spaces the matches were in, right? You just need short-term memory for something like that. Next, we're going to talk about long-term memory. All right. This is stored information. This is skills, experience, patterns, lessons. All right. Your long-term memory requires repetition. It requires meaning. Okay. Meaning, a sense of meaning. What's the point? Why is this? Why am I remembering this? Why is this meaningful or valuable to me? Right. And it requires emotional relevance. Okay. So long term memory uses or requires repetition, meaning, and emotional relevance. All right. And then the last one we're going to talk about is an executive function skill, which is working memory. All right. This is a big one for leaders. So, working memory is your brain's ability to hold information, manipulate it, right? So you know it so well that now I can translate it or manipulate it or change it into something else. It's still accurate, but you're able to manipulate it, right? And you're able to apply it in real time, right? In your own words, in your own way. That's how well the memory is because you know enough about it. You have that level of education. It's what allows someone to follow multi-step instructions, right? It is what allows someone to follow multi-step instructions. It's what allows someone to problem solve, to regulate emotions, to make decisions under pressure. All right. And here's the part where leaders need to understand working memory collapses under stress. If your team is dysregulated, their executive functioning drops, which means poor recall, more mistakes, miscommunication, reduced productivity. Not because they don't care, but because biology wins. Okay. So let's talk about the neuroscience, right? The neuroscience insight that leaders need. Okay. So in neuroscience studies, we saw something interesting. All right. Students who liked their teacher had better memory retention. Why? Why do you think that the students who liked their teacher had better memory retention? Well, many reasons, but because they weren't in survival mode, they had cognitive affinity, right? Their brain was able to really push its cognitive capacity. They felt safe, right? There was emotional safety. Their nervous system was regulated around this teacher or this educator. So it's important to know that when the brain feels safe, the prefrontal cortex stays online. When the brain feels threatened, the amygdala takes over. Okay. So the prefrontal cortex is like all of your executive functioning skills. It's the brain's engine, your ability to plan, think things through, be logical, rational, emotional regulation, task initiation, all of those things, right? When your brain feels safe, the prefrontal cortex stays online, it stays awake. When the brain feels threatened, the amygdala, which I like to call the little chihuahua, because the chihuahua is going to bark at everything. Everything looks like danger, right? It's trying to protect you, but the amygdala takes over, right? And when that happens, your memory suffers. And so do all your other executive functioning skills. So that's why teachers who had a better relationship with students, students who liked their teacher had better memory retention. Okay. Because when your brain feels safe, then you are more receptive and absorbent of the information. When it feels threatened, your memory suffers. So here's a leadership question for you all. Before you give important instruction, have you assessed the team's state? Before you give specific instruction, have you even assessed the state of the team? Okay, what do I mean? What's their mood? What's your relationship dynamic like? Where's their energy? What's the level of pressure this week? Are they regulated? Okay, if not, what needs to happen first? Sometimes the most productive thing you can do before giving instruction is to clarify expectations, reduce tension, okay? Make people feel a little more safe and a little more flexible, right? Reduce tension, address any confusion, and regulate the room, okay? Because instruction given to a dysregulated team is only going to equal lost information, okay? You want to be clear. You want to be clean when you give instruction and when you are communicating. Clear, clean communication boosts memory. All right. If you want something to be remembered, it has to be clear, it has to be direct, it needs to be timed appropriately, and it needs to be delivered with the right tone. All right. So let's break this down. The right tone, that means not harsh, not intimidating. Okay, that can trigger survival mode in certain people, right? It can come off very cold, or it can come off intimidating, like I said, right? You also don't want to come off whining or begging. That reduces clarity and it reduces authority. You want to be steady, grounded, and direct. Okay, so an executive presence equates to a regulated capacity under pressure. So, this is where it's important as a leader that you need to be regulated. Just because you're stressed, don't come in there fast paced, talking over everyone, speaking very loudly. Okay. And maybe you're a little more shy or what have you, and you're in the leadership role and everything's overwhelming. Don't come in, begging your team or, whiny or being exacerbated when you're trying to communicate something, right? Regulate yourself. This is the work that you have to do before communicating if you want to increase productivity and memory altogether. All right. So think about the right time as well. When is your team most cognitively available? Is it right after lunch? Is it Monday morning, right? The first hour of the day, first day of the week? Is it at the end of the week? All right. As a leader, you need to consider your team's capacity and you need to consider when they're the most cognitively available. All right. Also, the right people. Do not pass messages through third parties. Okay. Speak to the correct stakeholders. Speak directly to the person you are trying to um, get this task completed by or implement this memory with, right? Indirect communication decreases clarity and it increases distortion. All right. You're gonna want to make sure you're using the right wording. Get to the point. Avoid emotional clutter, avoid unnecessary detail. Clarity reduces cognitive overload. Cognitive load impacts your working memory. Okay. Next, you want to be in the right mode. Okay. How am I going to communicate this? What is the most effective way to communicate this so that my team retains this information or can recall this information? Is it going to be an email? Does this need to be an in-person conversation with visuals to help support the memory process? A team meeting, right? Match the message to the medium. So figure out the best way to do this. And if you need to send a follow-up memo after a meeting, right? Sometimes we get so much information in a meeting, we do need a follow-up memo, not a lengthy minutes, we don't need all that, but just a follow-up meeting memo of the most high level important pieces of information that need to be remembered, right? Or taken care of. And lastly, you're going to want to wrap up with 2 to 3 anchors. What's the point? Why does this matter? What action is required? What success looks like? Okay. People remember meaning more than instruction. All right. So why does this matter? Communicate that. What action is required? Communicate that. What does success look like? Okay. So just pay attention to these sort of things. All right. So, how can we boost working memory? How can we boost working memory? Okay. So, working memory strengthens with repetition, structure, routine, and consistency. All right. So, when systems are predictable, cognitive load decreases. Okay, so that's a good thing. When systems are predictable, when I know there's a routine, a system in place, there's some predictability, my cognitive capacity, I get more freedom. I feel more available to receive. So cognitive load decreases. All right. It's not so much weight. It's not such a heavy load. So when cognitive load decreases, your executive function improves. Okay. That improves your retention, your follow through, your confidence. Okay. So structure is not rigidity, but it is neurological support. All right. So let's talk about what harms memory in the workplace. Okay. These are some things that quietly damage retention. Pressure without clarity, improper tone, chaotic environments, lack of communication, miscommunication, or unclear communication, right? Chronic negativity or pessimism. All right. Stress shrinks the cognitive capacity, safety expands it. So be mindful of those things, okay? Something that might help is maybe once a quarter or I don't know, whenever your team sees fit, you do maybe like a Friday memory game, an interactive leadership tool. Okay, so this is where we're going to shift from theory to practice. And I think every team should have every once in a while something to help practice the way that we show up in the workplace. Okay, so like I said, once a month, once a quarter, try this with your team. It's a team building activity. So what you're going to do is round one. There's going to be a distraction round. This is a mini challenge game, and the team must remember where the items go. But during this round, add distractions, increased errors, um, add distractions, a lot of people talking, add distractions like a lot of noise, maybe flicker the lights on and off, have people walking around really fast, have someone spill a cup of water. I don't know. Now I'm just talking, but what you want to do is observe, okay, during this mini challenge. The team is supposed to remember where the items go. I want you to observe increased errors. I want you to observe the level of frustration trying to complete the task. I want you to observe misplacement. Okay. And then I want you to debrief what did distraction do to your recall memory? Talk about it as a team. Then there's going to be round two. Okay. There's going to be 3 rounds altogether for this Friday game or whatever day you put it on. Round two, the unclear instruction round. Okay, so we're going to run a yes or no recall test, but we're going to give unclear instructions about what you're saying yes or no to. Okay, watch how confusion rises. Okay, and then after that, talk about how did lack of clarity affect your performance. All right, this is going to create an embodied understanding of how lack of clarity really does affect performance. Okay, so again, it's going to be a yes or no recall test. So for example, I might say, do you recognize this item? Yes or no, right? Um, or that might be the point. The point might be for you to recognize an item, yes or no. But what I might do is put up two items, two animals, a tiger and a monkey, and you're going to say yes or no. Someone might automatically assume that the question is, are these two items related because they're both animals? Yes or no. And they might say yes, right? But really, there's a deeper or there's a different instruction to be provided. Really what I wanted to know is, do you recognize this item? Do you remember it from earlier today or earlier when we tested your memory? But because I'm not going to give clear instructions, people are going to be saying yes or no because they're going to assume, are they asking, do these pairs go together because they're both animals? Are they asking, can these animals work well together? What's the question? They're going to have a lack of clarity on the instruction. Okay. So play with that one. But the point is, you're going to want a lack of clear instruction round. Okay. And then round three is going to be clear and regulated. Okay. In this round of whatever memory game you put out there, you're going to give clear instructions. There are going to be no distractions. You're even going to ask your team, hey, what sort of barriers are there? What's distracting? They might say, can we turn some more lights on? You're going to listen. All right. They might say the room is really cold, or can I work in pairs instead of by myself? You're going to take that into consideration. You're going to give them adequate time to work on it, but you're also going to let them know there is a deadline. So treat this like a real situation, but be clear and regulated. All right. I want you to, in this round, observe any improved performance and then debrief what changed. Then connect it back to the workplace culture. All right. So, three rounds. One round is a distraction round, and you're going to test memory. One round is unclear instruction round. Okay. And it's going to be about memory, but you're not going to tell them that that round is about memory. You're not even going to give them clear instructions on what they're doing for this round. And then round three, it's going to be clear and regulated. No distractions, adequate time, asked what they need, clear instructions. Okay. So, memory improvement techniques. So, how can we improve memory overall? All right. Now we're moving forward outside of this interactive role play activity that I just shared. And I want to know, what do you guys think are some memory improvement techniques? Okay. Okay. Yeah. So, number one, use all your senses. All right. So, as a leader, you're going to want your team to use all of their senses, engage in visuals, auditory, or even kinesthetic systems. Okay. Number two, improve observation. Okay. So, first and foremost, minimize distraction during that encoding process when you're picking up the information. But overall, stay present. Improve your ability to observe and take information from what you're witnessing and observing. If you can improve your observation, you can improve your memory. Number three, stay calm during the retrieval process when you're trying to recall or go fetch that memory. If it doesn't come immediately, pause. Okay, stress blocks recall. So stay calm during the retrieval process. All right. Number four, avoid pessimism. Avoid chronic negativity, all right? Internally and the way you speak to your team, right? This goes for everybody. Depressive states reduce cognitive efficiency. Culture matters. Your words matter. The way you see your outcome and any negative thoughts and negative statements, those matter, all right? So avoid chronic negativity to improve your memory. Use mnemonics, right? Use acronyms, take on a level of poetic memory, use creative hooks, right? Use language and play with that a little bit to help um, improve memory, right? For your staff or for your team. Speak it out loud, all right? Have your team speak out loud. Verbal rehearsals strengthen memory pathways, okay? Mental imagery, all right? Use visual or illustrations during the encoding process, okay? Visual encoding enhances recall, all right? Oxygenate the brain. So give your team time for movement, breathing, breaks. Okay. Oxygenating the brain improves memory. Okay. So be mindful, especially if you work in like a really small building, there's no windows. It's a small space. The square foot is small. You know, give the team some breaks for breathing. Give them a guided breathing technique to do in the middle of the day. Go step outside and move around a little bit. All right. And then number nine, lifestyle. Promote enhanced quality of life for your team. Lifestyle matters. I'm talking sleep, nutrition, hydration, your relationships, your ability to regulate your emotions. Okay. How are you taking care of your lifestyle? This matters. Okay. If your team is exhausted, overstimulated, or dysregulated, retention suffers. Okay, you cannot separate lifestyle from performance. So really encourage them to be taking care of their personal lives as well. All right. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up. The final leadership reflection I want to go over is that memory is not just a brain function. Okay, it is a leadership responsibility. Leaders shape the emotional environment, the cognitive load, the clarity of communication, the systems of repetition. All right. If your team forgets things constantly, ask yourself, is this a motivation issue or a memory or a regulation issue? When the nervous system is supported, working memory improves. When working memory improves, executive function and execution improves. When execution improves, the culture shifts. And that's how leadership heals systems. If you guys have any more questions, please feel free to reach out to me via email. And thank you guys for joining. I'll be hanging out here in the webinar for a few minutes afterward. And yeah, feel free to connect with me. And I hope to see you guys also, not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after that for our next leadership development webinar.